very much. Thank you very much for inviting me. Do I need to unmute myself? No, I'm unmuted, aren't I? Okay. So it was difficult to know how to base this presentation because I know you're a Theosophy Society, so you're interested in the spiritual aspects of dreaming. But fundamentally, our dreams are stories that we tell ourselves about what's going on in our lives. Obviously, there are other aspects to dreaming, and there's certainly a transpersonal element that covers all manner of spiritual and also psychic phenomenon. But deciding what to focus on in this presentation, I decided, although dreams are multi-level and multifaceted, the best thing to focus on was the psychological aspect or the psychological approach, because we need to first be grounded in that approach to interpreting our dreams before we start considering transpersonal or spiritual aspects to it. So that's what I'm going to concentrate on today. So I'm sure you all know that historically there are two giants of dream work. Obviously there's Sigmund Freud and Carl Jung. I mean, Freud, I guess, was his seminal work, which was called The Interpretation of Dreams in 1900. He actually put dreams under professional scrutiny, and he took them out of the realm of priests and the esoteric, and began to study them seriously. And really, he was the father of modern psychology. And it really is because of him that we are able to discuss dreams in a scientific way today. Obviously, Jung was his protege, but Jung and Freud fell out over a disagreement about one of Carl Jung's dreams, because Carl Jung was certain that he knew what his dream meant, but Freud was applying his own theories to Carl Jung's dream, and he told him what his dream meant. So there's a lesson there, which I think I mentioned last week, is that we do not tell other people what their dream means. It's so important. When we do group work, which is really, really useful, we are always really careful to keep it ethical. So no one tells anybody else what their dream means. Okay, so Freud, actually, the work that Freud did, he did on his clients. I mean, he was a product of Victorian England with all its repressed attitudes about sexuality and everything else. And so it's not surprising really that he came up with the theories that he came up with. And all his clients were wealthy women, and most of them, were obviously neurotic. And what Freud did, he extrapolated his findings to the wider population. So generally today, dream analysis or dream psychology takes little account of what dreams, of what Freud pronounced about what our dreams mean. He basically suggested that dreams are wish fulfillment. So they are things that we want to do. So we might want to have an illicit affair, so we'll do it in our dreams because our waking consciousness couldn't bear to think about doing that. We might decide to murder our neighbour in our dreams. And although there are some dreams that are probably classed as wish fulfillment, they are quite rare. They aren't the norm. So Freud believed that dreams shows what lies behind the mask that we present to the waking world. Jung, on the other hand, was polar opposite to that. He believes that dreams highlight and elucidate our everyday concerns, and it's that concept now that is generally widely accepted by everybody. So I think it's probably fair to say that Freud believed man was a body with a mind, whereas Jung believed man was a soul with a body. So maybe with a Jungian perspective, you know, dreams have the potential to enrich our lives by raising our consciousness beyond our waking ego. I said last week, I don't subscribe to any particular theory. Although if I had to choose between Freud and Jung, I would obviously lean towards Jung. But I think subscribing to one particular theory tends to narrow down the chances of finding an authentic interpretation. So basically, the most important thing about exploring your dreams is to keep an open mind. And it's difficult because quite often we don't see things in the dream that actually are important. And I'm going to start a PowerPoint presentation for you now. There aren't many slides, but I shall keep it on the PowerPoint till I finish talking. And the first slide, let's have a look. There we go. Okay. It's a picture of coffee beans. This is just a fun slide because it just epitomizes to me so well what a dream is like. You know, this might be a dream about coffee beans. Maybe you went into a shop and there was just a big pot there with lots of coffee beans in, and you might go away thinking, oh, that dream was just about coffee beans and it's not important and it doesn't matter, and it probably happened because I was grinding some coffee beans yesterday. But once you start exploring the dream, no matter how insignificant a dream appears on the surface, you will find a depth to it, because dreams never come to tell us what we already know. Many dreams, many people say, oh, dreams are just reflections of what I did yesterday or the day before. No, they are not. Dreams are in the process of sifting through information to try and resolve everyday problems that your subconscious or your unconscious mind is dealing with. You may not even be aware of it on a conscious waking level. But normally, when I show this slide at a live talk, I ask people if they can see something else in that pile of coffee beans, and I'm hoping that some of you have seen it. See here, this face, a man's face. So that's what dreams are like. Once you start exploring your dream, you will find hidden depth to it. So say this was my dream, then that face, that figure would be important to the interpretation of the entire dream. It wouldn't be a dream about coffee beans. It would be a dream about something else entirely. So that's the first lesson really in analysing your own dreams, is that don't think that the dream is just the wrapping paper, because beyond the wrapping paper there's a gift inside, but you have to explore it, you have to find it, and it's not always obvious. Okay, so dreams speak their own language, and I'm sure you all know this. You will all have had dreams where you have marvelled at the ingenuity of a part of you that's come up with these beautiful stories. But you can't understand your dreams until you understand the language they're speaking. And I always used to say to people that it's rather like having a foreign pen pal, and this pen pal writes to you every night, and you pick the letter up and you look at it and you don't really understand it, so you just toss it aside because it's meaningless. And the language of dreams is a little bit like that. So dreams use a language of poetry to tell their stories, and not just poetry, but also myth and legend and archetype and parables and all sorts of stuff. But basically it's a language of poetry. It's a creative language. And the two main ways they do this is by using symbol and metaphor. And it's generally accepted now that this type of language predates our verbal language, and it's quite possible, and I would even say plausible, that animals still use the same unconscious language. It's visual, completely visual. So understanding this creative language requires you to use lateral thinking. I mentioned last week very briefly about the neurobiological pathways within the brain, that in waking consciousness we have these things called feed-forward nets. So we have lots of blocks so that our train of thought goes from A to B to C to D to E. It goes in a straight line. During dreaming, those synaptic blocks are not there. So one thought can go off in lots of different directions and make lots of different associations. So the secret is to make those associations in waking consciousness, because it's your waking ego that's trying to understand the dream. And this is why using an in-depth exploration technique, like the ones in my books, tend to bypass the waking ego, and they take you into that creative realm. Okay, so there must also be a willingness to explore all possibilities, even things that are hidden, and even things I've put there that are unpalatable to the conscious mind. Dreams tell the truth as it is. They tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth. And obviously our waking ego, we have our self-image to preserve, and there's things about all of us that we won't admit to, that we deny. We all have what we call shadow selves. Some people have many shadow selves. These are parts of the personality that they've disowned and they've pushed away, but those things are still in the unconscious. They're still there, and they will appear in your dreams, and it can be very difficult to identify them. That's why I say it's important to base your dream work initially in dream psychology. Otherwise it's very easy to say, oh well, that that woman that was in my dream last night, I actually know her and I don't like her, and she was shouting and being abusive to me, so that dream was just about her. No, the dream wasn't about her, it was about you and your personality traits. So dream work isn't easy. It's really not easy, and it can take courage, and it is useful to work in a group, to do group dream work, or to share your dreams with a like-minded dreamer. I won't be covering that in this presentation, but all I would say about that is just make sure you do it ethically, and never ever tell anybody what their dream means, even though you may see something really clearly about somebody else's dream because you know that person very well, but it's not ethical to point it out to them. Okay, it can cause terrible problems. Okay, so let's look at symbols. So symbols abound in our dreams, and obviously they are much more than their outer appearance suggests. So they summon all sorts of things: emotions, beliefs, behaviours, and they not only have personal associations, they also have cultural. So for instance, if I just arrived from planet Mars or whatever, and I saw this symbol of a cross on a hill, I would just think two pieces of wood that have come from a tree and they just nailed together, you know, in a shape. Obviously, because I was brought up in the Christian tradition, I would make associations with Calvary and Jesus and my childhood and the congregational church I was brought up in. So there's a whole range of associations that I would have with that symbol in my dream. And what you have to remember in a dream is that nothing is chosen at random. Absolutely nothing. You will hear some people say, "Oh no, I dreamt about that. I dreamt about that red car because I saw a red car drive past the house yesterday." Everything is there for a reason. Okay, and that's a really important point to remember, because what it does, it stops you overlooking things that might hold the key to the interpretation of the entire dream. So symbols are much more than their physical appearance. They're very personal to the dreamer. So this is why, you know, I don't advocate the use of dream dictionaries. Dream dictionaries are everywhere these days. And there are some very old-fashioned ones that are quite humorous to read. I've got one that was printed in 1850, and it's hilarious. I mean, it's really funny. So you have to remember that the symbols in your dream are very personal to you. If there's a symbol that you're particularly struggling with, and you're finding it difficult to make any associations to it, by all means, check a modern dream dictionary, or, you know, Google it, whatever, just to give you some pointers. But don't take it as read. Don't take it to mean that that's what the symbol in your dream means. It's just there to help you explore it. Okay, so for instance, a dog in a dream is not any old dog. It's a unique creation, and it's got very specific associations. And I don't know why I did this, but there you go. We'll have a few dogs on the screen. So, you know, if you look in a dream dictionary for a dog, it will probably say man's best friend, obedience, and, you know, a loving pet and all this. But that's not necessarily true. I mean, I was bitten by a large dog, an Alsatian dog, when I was about 8. And I was terrified. And I'm still not particularly a doggy person. I'm a cat person. I don't mind dogs, but I don't really, I wouldn't want one, and I, you know, I don't like petting them. So if I had a dream about, you know, say I dreamt about a big black dog, that would mean to me that there's something in my present situation that I'm finding threatening, something that I think might bite me. Because what the unconscious does, the energy of whatever emotion you're feeling at the time latches on to the energy that's stored in your unconscious. So if I have a dream about a black dog, then there's something in the present that's threatening me, and the energy is latching on to the dog from my childhood, and that's why it's popped up in my dream. So it's important to explore all images in this way. So even if it's a dog, it's not any old dog. It's a specific dog, and it's there for a specific reason. And I will just add at this point as well that dreams arise from the limbic system, which is at the top of the brainstem, in the middle of the brain. And it's quite a primitive part of the brain. It's often called the seat of emotion, and that's where dreams derive from. And that's why it's the emotion of a situation, a current situation, that drives the dreams. And it's not an easy matter to find what that emotion is, because quite often on a conscious level we'll be blotting it out. But I will talk a bit more about that later. Okay, so this is just another example about being specific, because it's Valentine's Day tomorrow, isn't it? And I thought, it's Valentine's Day tomorrow. I'm having my COVID injection tomorrow. Oh, what a happy Valentine's present for me. So you can see that if you dream about a rose, you can't just, you know, think about your associations to any old rose. A rose can be, it can be different colours, it can be single in bunches in a vase, it can be wilted, it can be fresh, it can be scented. It's a very specific image. Your dreaming mind has conjured this image up, and it's because it's meaningful to it. Okay, so move on to metaphor. So dreams are very metaphorical. And again, when we think of metaphor, we generally think of common metaphors, because we all use metaphor in our everyday language all the time. And it's actually probable, but this is the modus operandi of the unconscious, predating spoken language. So we have an experience and we make a story out of it, a visual story to illustrate it. So I've just put a selection up here. So I mean, if you dream of a crossroads, it's quite obvious, isn't it, that you must have a decision to make, and you currently can't make up your mind because you've got various choices. I mean, this one, raining cats and dogs, I don't know if anybody who's actually dreamt about that, but it's a nice simple metaphor. This one, seeing red, you know, that usually means that you're feeling pretty angry. Obviously, the colour red can also be love and passion. It depends on the content of the dream. But if I was walking through a park like that in a dream, I would know that the dream was about an issue of anger. This one is important. This is that horrible monster shadow creeping up the stairs to your bedroom, and he's going to get you. Very, very common dream. And this monster is, it's either a situation or a person or a fear of something that is pursuing you, and it, you know, it is threatening to annihilate you. Those dreams quite often have a nightmarish quality, and we've all had them at some point. I'll tell you now, those dreams are a gift. They really are, and you really should honour your nightmares, because what they're doing, it's your unconscious virtually slapping your face, saying, there's a huge problem here and I want you to listen. And if you don't listen, things are just going to get worse. So honour your nightmares. If you have a dream like that, it would be a great idea to incubate a question. What did the monster in my dream represent? Or what did that thing that was chasing me represent? And keep on asking that question until you get the answer. And also, although again this is a bit beyond the realm of what I'm doing tonight, but the best way to deal with it is to practice, if you can, lucid dreaming. A lucid dream is a dream where we're in a dream but we know we're dreaming but we're still asleep. And in cases like that, you can face up to the monster and you can say, why are you chasing me? Who are you? And when you do that, you honestly, you will be amazed at what happens, and you will get so many answers. And quite often, whatever fear it is that is chasing you, if you just embrace it in the dream, embrace the monster, you will be integrating that fear, and whatever the fear was will be gone. Your life will change. So nightmares are very, very powerful. I mean, all dreams are, powerful, but nightmares particularly. And I've just put down here this picture of a man that's half tiger. And I will just mention here the lady's dream that she spoke of at the beginning. It was a wonderful dream. That it was just a wonderfully powerful dream. And just going back to the monster for the time being, always befriend a tiger in your dreams, always. And if it opens its mouth and invites you to put your hand in its mouth, oh, please do it. You will be amazed at the result you get. So don't run away from frightening things in your dream. Welcome them and integrate them. So this man down here, who's half tiger, what you often get in a dream, and no one can explain this, we don't know why it happens, but quite often people will appear as somebody else. So the best example I can give you of that is, I mean, I've been divorced 30 years now, and my ex-husband wasn't the best husband to have had. Let's put it that way. So since I was divorced, I have had relationships, obviously, and there was one relationship in particular that was a very serious relationship, and it you know, it lasted 5 or 6 years. But this man kept appearing in my dreams as my ex-husband. I mean, that is just you know, a start warning, or let's say it's a flag to warn you that either your new relationship is just the same as your old relationship. Is that because you're behaving in the same way? Maybe you have expectations that are unrealistic. It can be anything, but it's flagging up that this current relationship is the same as the one you had before. And that goes for anything. When somebody in your dream appears as somebody else, that's the reason. Okay. Right, so yeah, I've put there, dreams not only use common metaphors, they also use conceptual ones. So all the ones that I've shown you here are pretty common metaphors that everybody would understand. But what the dreaming mind does, it forms its own metaphors from the concepts it's forming from your experiences. And it can be difficult sometimes to tease the metaphor out, but when you do, it just gives so much clarity to the entire dream. And I haven't mentioned this lady in a car here as that. I mean, I'm sure again we've all had dreams about driving a car that's about to crash. I used to have loads of dreams like that, and that's mainly because you know, that you are going along in your own sweet way in your life, but your unconscious knows you're heading for a disaster or a crash, or maybe you're going too fast, or maybe you're not abiding by the speed limit. Whatever, those dreams are important. Okay. So many life situations are conceptualized as a journey. So if you have a dream of you know, being on a journey, it's about your life journey, and that there's no exception to that. It's always the case. And some of the common metaphors, you know, you might be in your dream walking down a road and the road suddenly ends and it's a dirt track, and the metaphor there would be I've reached the end of the road. So there'll be something in your life that you've had enough of, you know, and this has got to end. I feel like I'm going around the bend. That I'm not sure whether that's a purely Yorkshire saying, but I can tell you a very funny story about that. When just after my divorce, I mean, I was in a very depressed state of mind, and it was tough, and I had 2 young children, and I was trying to juggle a full-time job and bring the kids up, and I was doing an OU degree. And I started saying to my friends, I just feel like I'm going to pot, because that's what we say in Yorkshire. I'm going to pot. And one night I had this most wonderful dream. I laughed about it for days and days, because the unconscious is quite often quite humorous if it wants to buoy you up. But in the dream, I was in a car, my car, the kids were in the back seat. I needed petrol. I stopped at a petrol station. I tried to put petrol in the car. Petrol wouldn't go in because the car was full. It didn't need petrol. So I got back in the car, drove down this road, and I came to this village, and there was a big signpost, and it said, "Welcome to Pot." And the village in the dream was called Pot. So because I'd said this metaphor so many times to my friends, I'm going to Pot, my dream in mind conjured up this beautiful image, which was so humorous. But even in that dream, there was a message, and it was about the garage and putting the petrol in the car. It was telling me, you'll get through this. You've got enough energy, you've got enough petrol, you've got everything you need to get through this. So that's how powerful dreams can be, and that's how uplifting and empowering they can be. Okay, it should be a smooth road from here. That's also a common metaphor. It's been a rough road. I mean, I've had dreams in the past where I am walking over stony roads in bare feet because I've lost my shoes, you know, because I was going through a really rough time. So if it's something we've never done before, then we'll often dream that we're in either unfamiliar territory or a foreign land. I mean, I know when I went to university full time, when I was trying to make the decision to take that giant step, I actually dreamt that I was at a border crossing, and I was crossing into an alien land. I think it was France at the time, where I didn't speak the language, and what was I going to do, and I'm going to get lost. And so very common metaphors. And of course, transport in dreams is important, and again, really common dreams. But it's important to ask why am I in a car in this dream? And if I'm in a car, am I driving? And how am I driving? Am I going too fast? Am I going too slow? Am I sat in the back? Is somebody else driving? Perhaps nobody's driving and I'm in the back seat. Perhaps the car's out of control. You know, there are all these different scenarios that are reflecting our journey through life at that particular time. I tended at some point to have quite a few dreams about buses, being on a bus, which was unusual because I don't generally catch buses, I drive. So if you're on public transport, then, you know, that's completely different to driving a car. To get on a bus, you've got a planned route. You've planned your route out, and somebody else is driving the bus, and somebody else is going to take you on your planned route. Okay, so all these different associations are important within the context of the dream. Okay. Water in dreams, I've put there almost always. It's always. I've never met anyone in the dreaming fraternity that would dispute this. So water always represents the unconscious and the state of our emotions. So if you dream about water, it depends, you know, what were you doing with the water? Were you drinking it? Were you watching a stream? Were you swimming in it? Whatever you were doing, you need to ask, how was the water affecting you? And was it cold or was it hot? Were you comfortable with the water, or was it frightening? Was it murky or was it clear? If it was murky water shows your emotions and your thoughts are all clouded. You're not thinking straight. Clear water generally in a dream is a really good positive sign. Were you swimming or were you sinking? So, for instance, this dream here, if you had a dream about a sinking boat, whether you were on the boat or maybe you were just watching the boat sink, there are so many metaphors that you can come up with for that. I mean, it is a sum. On a positive note, it could be I'm looking for someone to float my boat, for instance. Or I thought it'd be plain sailing, and it's obviously not. Because I'm sinking and I'm going under. So this sort of dream can be a forewarning of depression. And I say forewarning because we don't always know when we're depressed. And in these days of COVID lockdown, mental health, it's a huge issue these days. And most of us, have been brought up to battle on and we'll be fine. And I know I'm feeling a bit down, but I'm not really, I'm fine, I'm okay. If you have a dream like this and you're on that boat and it's sinking, that will be a flag for you to speak out to someone and just talk your problems over with somebody. So I think that, there, I feel like I'm drowning. We've already said that. Okay. And what about your dream house? Right. Well, it was Carl Jung actually that postulated that your dream house is a representation of self. And in my experience, I find that to be true. So, I've had dreams where in my dream house, it's needed decorating, or it needs a coat of paint, or whatever. I mean, in cases like that, you would know that there's some issue in your life that needs a facelift. Something needs improving. If you're inside a public building, the dream is 9 times out of 10 will be to do with your public persona. So that's our outward looking face, if you like. So that will give you a clue as to how to interpret the dream. If it's in an old castle or some ancient monument or something like that, then it's generally something from the past. Of course, it may be a very spiritual dream. If you're in a tent, I mean, I used to dream I was in a tent all the time, and a tent it's what it is. It's a temporary accommodation. So whatever situation you are going through in your life, if you dream you're in a tent, it's just a temporary situation. Okay. So animals in dreams are always important, and they're such fun dream symbols to work with. And you'll see I have that beautiful tiger there. When I was trying to decide whether to give up work and write full time, I had lots of dreams about owl, and I've actually got it's up there on my bookcase, a statue of an owl which I keep in my office all the time, because the energy of owl was very important to me in deciding my future. Obviously, if you dream about sheep, sheep don't have much control over their life, do they? And they just do as they're told and follow the rest of the sheep. so if you dream about sheep, it could be telling you that maybe you're acting like that and maybe you shouldn't, or it may be saying you should act like this. It depends on the context of the dream. I've got a cat here, and cats in dreams, I've already said I'm a cat person. A cat in my dream always represents how I'm feeling, and there's no exception to that. And you may find that you have a special animal that appears in your dreams. So one of the dreams that I actually haven't had it for a long time, but I used to dream oh, I have a cat and I've forgot to feed it. I've not fed it for 4 days. And in the dream, I'm worrying, I'm stressed out trying to find my cat to feed it. Okay, I mean, that is a clear indication that I'm not looking after myself, you know, and I need to pay more attention to my own well-being. Injured animals in dreams will always represent you having been injured in some way, usually a psychological or mental injury, and particularly if the animal is young, say it's a young puppy or a kitten, and even if it's neglected or if it's injured or if it's being badly treated, generally if it's a young animal, it's relating to the child inside you, and work on those dreams is really important and really, really valuable, and also very, very therapeutic and very, very rewarding. So it's good to take note of the animals in your dream. I will just mention the horse there because I'm definitely not a horsey person. Horses seem to bully me. I mean, I love animals, all animals, but I'm really wary of horses. They always seem to corner me in fields and won't let me go, and I get a bit frightened of them. But one dream that I had, it's about 8 years ago now, and I was having a lot of problems with my gut. An awful lot of problems, and I was under a consultant at the hospital and all sorts of things. I had this wonderful dream where I was in a house, and I was in an upstairs room looking out of the window, and I was throwing food out of the window in this dream down onto the street below, food that I didn't want, just throw it out the window. And suddenly this huge horse appeared at the window. I mean, it was an upstairs window, so this horse must have been at least 15 feet tall. You know, it was a giant horse. And it said, will you stop doing that? This is hurting me. All that food you're throwing out is hitting me. So in the dream, I thought, oh God, you know, stupid horse. So I got a big long tube and I put a tube out of the window. And rather than throwing all the food out the window, I started feeding it down this tube. And the horse still didn't like it. It still wasn't satisfied. Now that dream is in one of my books, Working the Night Shift, because I worked with that dream. And you know, decided that it was my diet that was causing all these problems. Honestly, the consultant had even warned me I may have cancer, and nobody mentioned diet. Nobody mentioned diet. I cut out wheat, and later, because of a dream, I cut out lactose, and then I was fine. So that horse in that dream, because I'm not a horsey person, my association to that horse was horsepower, energy again. So what that dream told me was that whatever I was putting down this tube, which was my esophagus, was damaging my energy. And as soon as I changed my diet, I found I had more energy. So that's how useful our animal dreams can be. There's a little flea here. If you dream about fleas, it's usually just a niggly little problem, niggly little things that need sorting out, but nothing major. Okay. So emotional climate metaphors are also important. So whatever you dream, you need to have account of the weather in the dream, because that also is not there randomly, it's there for a purpose. So for instance, what does this stormy sky say about how you're feeling? So, well, common metaphors, aren't they? Storm clouds are gathering, there's a heavy brooding atmosphere, there's a cloud hanging over me, I'm weathering the storm. Okay. But the metaphor is not always the obvious one. So I'm flagging this up because most people seeing this will think, oh, what a beautiful beach. And think, if I dream about that, I'm just feeling peaceful and tranquil. It's beautiful, isn't it? But it may not be that, you know. It may be help. I'm marooned on a desert island. So you have to take the environment within the context of the dream every time. Okay, so I've put a quote here from one of my dreaming colleagues who sadly passed in 2018. Jeremy Taylor was a Unitarian minister in the USA, and he did lots of work on therapeutic dreams and also an ethical way to work with dream groups. So he said that dreams always come in the service of health and wholeness. And he also maintained that dreams never ever come to tell us what we already know. So treat each dream as a gift. I'm mentioning here a term that you may or may not have heard. That's prodromal dreams. A prodromal dream is a dream that seems to be giving warning about a health issue. Now, it's important that a dream that you think is prodromal, that you explore the possibilities rather than take it immediately at its face value, obviously. But there is evidence that we have a somatic intelligence, which means the cells in our body have their own memory and their own intelligence. So the dreaming mind will tend to pick up on disease before it physically manifests. And the example I can give you for that, which comes to mind immediately, is when I was at university. I was studying for my finals, and I used to go up to the Dark Peak, which is just within walking distance from my house, with my rucksack on my back and all my books and everything. And it used to be peaceful. It's not peaceful now since lockdown. It's horrendous, but there wouldn't be anybody else up there, and I would take a picnic and I'd be up there all day revising for my finals. And one day there was a lamb that was bleating, and I could hear it across the valley, and it was obviously in distress. So I packed everything up, I went to seek it out, and it was separated from its mother by a fence, and the mother couldn't get to it, and the lamb was obviously hungry and in distress. So I had to chase the lamb. It didn't give itself up willingly. I'm chasing this lamb over the moors, and I managed to catch it, and I passed it over the fence to its mother. So that was my good deed for the day. And that night I dreamt I was looking down a microscope at bacteria, and a doctor came up and told me, that's inside you. Now, you know, I that did not come from a conscious mind. I had no inkling that you can catch disease off sheep, you know. But it turned out 3 days later, I came down with a devastating Campylobacter infection. It was awful. I thought I was dying. And the doctor asked me, have you eaten chicken? Do you leave your milk on the doorstep? The answer to that was no. Either. Have you been round any sheep? Well, yes. Sheep can carry Campylobacter. That's why you must never drink moorland water from streams where there's sheep grazing. So my dreaming mind, I think, picked up on that infection before it actually manifested. So that's an example of a prodromal dream. And sometimes illness is caused by, you know, blocked energy or stress. And one of the ways that you can work with a dream, and I have done this in group work with the International Association Study of Dreams, it's called embodying the dream. So sometimes if a dream is escaping analysis, if you're not really sure what it means, it's really helpful to just sit with the dream and just close your eyes, imagine the dream, and see if you can feel it somewhere in your body. And with practice, you can do this. It's an amazing technique. It's not easy, but it definitely works. But it tells you where the energy of the dream is residing within your body, and you can then work with that. Similarly, you can do that with sound too. So not all dreams have a sound. Most dreams don't. But within the body of the dream, say in the dream you are sat by a babbling brook, you can make the sound of the babbling brook, actually voice that and make that sound out loud over and over again. And again, believe it or not, that can give you a very deep insight into the dream. So these are just things worth trying. You need to ask, what is the theme of the dream? So, you know, is it about relationships? Is it about loss? Is it whatever? So identifying the theme again will help you in your interpretation, because just working on the symbols without doing other things, you know, may not necessarily lead you in the right direction. A look at the action within the dream, and I've put there cause and effect because it's important to remember that a dream is a story that your unconscious is making up on the hoof. So something that happens in a dream then prompts something else to happen, and that prompts something else to happen. So if there's something in the dream that maybe it seems a bit bizarre or out of context, it's important to look at what happened in the dream just before that happened, and that will give you a clue as to its the reason it's there and its interpretation. Okay. And then I've put there, you know, explore the dream in depth. My next slide is a really quick way to explore dreams. But if you're serious about dream work and serious about increasing your self-awareness, and also serious about using your dreams to direct your life and your decisions, then you really need to explore dreams in depth. And I will apologise for flagging up my books here, and I'm sure Erica won't mind, but this is just some of the techniques in day shift. You probably can't see that, but there's 10 different techniques: dream mapping, dream associations, dream re-entry. It's a shamanic way of working with dreams, and it's very powerful, and I have used that on many occasions. And it's also a great technique to use if you've incubated a dream and you're having trouble understanding it, or maybe you find that the answer you're looking for isn't there, or maybe there's no resolution there. If you re-enter the dream in a meditative state and then just let the dream unfold in your mind's eye, it's like a shamanic journey. And what you're doing is you're putting yourself hopefully into that stage between awake and asleep, so you're in a very relaxed state, and it's allowing all the creativity from your unconscious mind to bubble up and to continue the story of the dream. Okay, work in the day shift contains 10 more techniques, but they're more advanced techniques which take longer. The working with dreams, which Tim mentioned, that's got 30 techniques, but it hasn't got any examples. And I think when you're first learning to interpret dreams, it's a good idea to read a technique with an example, so you know how the technique has been applied and the conclusions that have been arrived at. I have to confess, when I wrote the first book, Working the Night Shift, I was a bit worried, like Freud was when he did his interpretation of dreams, because he included a lot of his own dreams. Um, and you're like bearing your soul to the world. But I wrote Working the Night Shift in, I think it was 2005. Working the Day Shift I wrote in 2012. So it's history now for me. There's one more book which I wrote, it's a skills workbook, and it's called Dreaming Yourself Aware, and that takes you through different techniques step by step, and a lot of the stuff we did last week is in there, I think. Anyway, so you can check those out at your leisure. So, a basic method that you can use on the dream you've incubated. Write the dream down in as much detail as possible. I'm sure you've all done that. It does help to write it in the present tense. You don't have to do, but if you rewrite it in the present tense, it helps to put you right back into the dream as if it's really happening. So it can be helpful. Give it a title. I should have mentioned this really at the very start. Giving your dream a title is absolutely essential, and it should probably be the first thing you do after you've written it down. And think of a newspaper strapline, and quite often the title that jumps out will often be the theme of the dream. Once you've explored the dream in depth, if you choose to do that, then your title might change, because you will have a much deeper understanding. Okay. It's important to ask yourself, how did you feel when you woke from the dream? And this is the emotion felt on waking, not the expected emotion from the dream. That's important because it will help you understand or know the situation that the dream is about. I mean, you may wake from what appears to be quite a happy dream, but you wake up feeling a bit despondent and not feeling like you really want to get up. So it's important that you write that feeling down because it's a good indicator. This is really important. Is there anything that particularly stands out? Size, bizarreness, colour, etc. So, you know, like my giant horse. Things that are big in a dream, whether they're big or they're bizarre, they stand out in some way, are really important. Probably the most important symbol in the entire dream, because your unconscious has made it big for a reason, because it's a big issue and it wants to be noticed. So where you have a situation or an image or a symbol like that, make associations to it, expand it, look at cultural associations, think about what that thing does. And I've put there, explain to alien. I've put that in to remind me to just say, if you're struggling to make free associations to something, imagine you're an alien. Um, Imagine you're explaining it to an alien. So say I dream of a stool. I might say it's made from wood and it's got 3 legs and it's not really stable. And you find it at, you know, in pubs, at bars, and yeah. So that helps to stand yourself outside the dream and look at the image objectively. Okay, because don't forget, all images are there for a reason. Colour is important. I'm not going into that here, but lots of research has been done about colour that stands out in dreams, and we've already seen a slide of us seeing red, you know. So colour is important too. It's there for a reason. And ask yourself why. The why is the most important question when you're analysing dreams. So why was it a blue car and not a red one? Why was it a stool and not a chair? There are reasons, and the reasons are the associations you make personally to that symbol. So always ask why. Don't take anything at face value. Okay, and then the last question you would ask, and particularly with the dream that you have just incubated, because you asked a question, does the dream contain advice, the advice you asked for, or does it contain a resolution? If you haven't been able to tease that out, because not all dreams do, dreams quite often, you know, they will have a bit of a conflict somewhere and they'll have a climax, but there's not always the ending resolution. So if there isn't, then use one of the exploration techniques to consciously formulate your own resolution. Or of course you could incubate again, asking for a resolution or asking how that dream should end. The again, I've already mentioned it, the dream re-entry technique is fantastic for deciding on a resolution. So you would take the dream, you would run through the dream in your mind's eye in a relaxed state. You've got to make sure you don't fall asleep, of course. And then when the dream comes to an end, you just watch how it progresses, and hopefully the dream story will continue. And you may meet animals or people during that meditative state, and you can ask them questions. You know, you can ask, how does this dream end? And they will usually not answer you in verbal language, but there will be some symbolic representation which will hold the answer. So your unconscious mind it's just bubbling all the time with so much creativity. We are creative beings, and it's good for our health and our wholeness and our spiritual development and our self-awareness to know what's going on in our unconscious mind. If we don't know what's going on in there, we're like blind men foraging round in the dark. So I think that's my last slide. Oh yeah, I've just put there, but be warned that this simple technique will often not bypass the conscious ego. So, and honestly, it is difficult. I mean, there are times when I first started analysing my dreams back in the 1990s. When I look back at those dreams now, and I look at the conclusions I came to about those dreams, I missed so much because I didn't know myself well enough to identify certain character traits in some of the dreams. So I either overlooked them and thought, oh, they're not important, or I assigned them to somebody else. We all do that. So thank you for listening. Hopefully, I'm sorry I've gone on a bit long, haven't I? It's but hopefully we've got time for some questions now, and some feedback. Oh, sorry, I've got another slide. Oh, I forgot to mention omens and signposts. Yeah, it's important with your incubated question. It's important to know that you can also ask that question to the universe. And I was going to tell you an example here of cows. I had a dream about, which I titled Poisoned Cows. And I didn't know what the dream meant. And I went out for a walk that day to think about the dream. And I got chased by a herd of heifers. And obviously then that was reiterating what the dream was telling me, and I asked the doctor for a lactose intolerance test, and that's how I found out I was lactose intolerant. So the universe is only willing to help you, so we don't just get signs and omens from our dreams. You can also ask the universe. Okay, and those are my books. Right, I'll stop sharing now.